What are we talking about today?
World Happiness Report. This is
Love it.
this is going to be a good one. I think you're probably not going to expect where a lot of these countries, cities landed in this report. It's not a short report either. Let me put that out there for you guys to understand. You're welcome for going through this 276-page report just to truly find out how happy people are around the world, and obviously tie that back into maybe that's a good spot to invest as an American investor.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it says something about, what countries are doing, let's call it like right. The thing that I've found interesting about the whole report from the start, and I've been following this report for a long time, especially where Canada ranks on it, obviously being a Canadian, but a lot of these places are, and you'll see The Economist does a similar one called the Global Livability Index, right? The most livable cities. But the challenge is all of the places that rank really high, nobody can afford them. So it's like, okay, it's kind of like, yeah, sure, it is like a very livable city, but if you're like a millionaire and you can afford to live there, right? And a lot of people can't do that. Like a lot of the people, at least, people that I've discussed who want to buy real estate abroad are doing it not because they're super rich. Like I would say that's a segment of our audience, right? But then there's the segment of our audience that is also people who are saying, I'm never going to be super rich unless I get a relative advantage by moving to another country. And for a lot of people who are remote workers, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to move to, Colombia or Portugal or whatever, have a higher quality of life, have a relative higher buying power, and not watch my, the country that I live in, Canada, the US, or, whatever, the UK, erode away the value of my currency and my buying power. And so that to me is an important segment of the audience.
I think one line I've heard you say quite a bit lately that I've picked up on, Timmy's. What I would do disgusting things to have a cup of Tim Hortons. Is it a double-double?
Yeah, coffee and a dart all in one. Is there any other way to get a Tim's?
He's got the flannel on too. Same, just not red. It's just incredible.
Yeah. I went to California for a month, and then I come back and I'm like, I just have to do dress like a lumberjack and drink a Tim Hortons. First thing I do.
Day one, wake up, Tim Hortons, double, and maybe a crisp Boston cream donut. This is down my gully.
Like when like people go scuba diving and they have to like decompress, like they have to like re-chamber. This is me re-chambering to Canada right now. It's like,
got some maple syrup in your pocket.
For sure. No, I used it to wash my hair this morning.
All right, sorry. One line that you kept saying this week, because I'm a big fan, so I tuned into all your stuff to support my good friend. Consumer sentiment and maybe how that would tie into these markets and the World Happiness Report.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So we'll definitely talk about that, because a lot of it is like, how is the economy doing? But then a lot of it is also like, how does society how do people feel? Like, do they feel connected to one another? And I've been talking to like my Instagram comment threads has basically become like it's like Reddit colliding with like Twitter, like, you know what I mean? It's like the left and right, just like, I don't know. It's fun, to be honest. I really enjoy it.
I knew you had a day yesterday. I woke up and I said, Foch chose violence today.
For sure. Yeah. But so people, I get a lot of people who respect like what I've been trying to do, which is just tell the truth the whole time. And they'll say, oh, like, have you noticed like people are getting like increasingly inflammatory? And I'm like, yeah, I think what's happening in Canada, and you saw this in the US last year, is people become more and more selfish because the economy isn't serving them anymore. And so they can't think of, like, everyone's just trying to make ends meet. Right. And so they can't think economically beyond the self. Right. And so you inherently become selfish, and then their political rhetoric really ramps up. Like, they can't see the other side's point of view, and it's just really fascinated me. So I think that's like, in regards to consumer sentiment and how the economy is eroding, that's one of those things that really, like, I would say Canada feels really freaking angry right now, not happy, right?
Yeah, I think one thing that people probably undervalue or underestimate is the power of consumer sentiment. Like, I genuinely think a humongous part of the real estate market is backed and based off of consumer sentiment and like how people feel,
Totally
because
agree.
Especially like first-time home buyers or newer buyers or new investors. It's like they're less focused on the numbers and the product, and significantly more focused on consumer sentiment, and they're basing this off of how they feel, which is crazy, but it has a humongous impact that I think a lot of people actually underestimate. And you're right, Canada is there's a lot of arguing. Look, I think that we've gone so far. This is whatever. We've gone so far left and right that like the middle is where we need to be.
Well, and I would say probably that like 80% of voters do exist in the middle, and then there's like the 10% on either side that's super loud, right? So it sounds like, the whole population is cut, but like the reality is like the 80% of people who, or even if you say like 40% of them are, center left and 40% of them are center right, they're just sitting there like, I don't want to participate in this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a normal dialogue about, like, I don't want to, I don't, and so they probably just have better things to do, frankly, than argue with one another on Instagram, on Dan's Instagram comments about politics, right? So
For sure.
I think that's another piece of the puzzle as well. I would say most people, I think most people are pretty politically centrist, right? Like you kind of get the pendulum swinging back and forth, and most people like do end up probably in the middle. Okay, so let's start with Canada in regards to what kind of prompted this report, because Canada and the US both have seen huge drops in their World Happiness Report ranks as happiest countries, and Canada and the US both ranked among the largest losers. So this is an article from CBC. Canada slipped from 18th place to 18th place from 15th place last year, and in 2015, so savage of them to always use 2015 because that's the year Trudeau got elected. Like, but anyway, Canada was 5th in the world. So basically, in the last 10 years, we've dropped from the 5th happiest country on earth to the 18th happiest country on earth. Look, top 20 is still good. I'm not knocking that, but it's not 5th, right?
Right. I was thinking we should, because I didn't know this, we should cover who's on this list and why they're on this list, because I didn't know. It's like, what is it? I have it. The OECD has 38 countries, right? Which is basically the top wealthiest countries. And what does OECD even mean? So this is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's basically an international organization that works to promote economic growth through like member countries, established in December 14th, 1960. That's what we're measuring here, because I didn't know that, to be honest. I'm like, who are we measuring this against?
Right.
But that's how. Sorry, I figured.
Yeah. So and the reason why you always hear OECD in data is because the OECD is this group of people who are who are collaborating and all submitting comparable data points. So like they'll say, they'll all agree, okay, this is a set of important information, numbers that we need to gather from our economy. Here's what let's all agree, and we're all going to submit it to this big pool of data, and that's OECD is kind of the aggregator for that. So this is okay. Because this is a country that we've like, look at the ramp up here from number 6, Costa Rica. Look at that. Can you see that on the screen share?
Yeah.
Like Costa Rica has gone from basically in 2022 23rd place to 6th place on Earth. And then there's another one with another couple big gap ups here. Mexico wasn't even on the list. 25th in 2023. It won't even show me because it's off the charts, literally off the charts in 2022. So in 2 years, Mexico has gone from being off the charts in a bad way at the bottom of the chart, and then to 25th in 2023, 2 years ago, to 10th place. Okay,
look at that. Winners win,
buddy. It's all because Dave Hutch moved to Mexico, and his smile is so contagious that all of the Mexican population has just improved their quality of life.
Even the locals are like, we like this guy, man. Just a happy guy. I'm gonna find out why Costa Rica jumped so high. I'm doing some research on this as we speak.
Well, yeah, let's look through the report. Let's get into it. So if I go to this tab here, so this is your World Happiness Report evaluations from 2023. Costa Rica was in 23rd in 2023 here. Yeah, and they just jumped up to 6th.
I think most of it says strong social systems, country's emphasis on universal health care.
So So here's the factors in this chart. This is the chart from 2023. So it says dystopia plus residual. We're gonna have to look that one up because it just seems like it's gonna be kind of hard. Like dystopia is like like The Giver, right? Like you read that book in high school, The Giver, where the guy gives the guy the bad memory.
Harry Potter in high school.
Dave's like, yeah. It's that was curriculum, I think, in Canada. Anyway, dystopia is like this, like when you're living in like some like unimaginable, like weird future, like that's bad, right? Like 1984 would be a dystopia. Okay, so
imagined or real society where conditions are. Oh wait,
perceptions of corruption. Define dystopia for our audience, because I tried, but I did a pretty bad job.
I think you nailed it. What is it? Let's say dystopia versus what?
Residual. I don't know. We'll have to go through the report to figure it out, but perceptions of corruption, that one's obvious. Generosity, obvious. Freedom to make life choices, pretty important stuff. I'm gonna say out there. That's up there. Healthy life expectancy. Costa Rica crushes it on that. They have a blue zone. We should do an episode on blue zones actually at some point. Blue zones, right?
Of course. I watched the Netflix.
You're over 30 now. You're trying to live forever, so you're like, well, of course I know what a blue zone is. I'm gonna drink wine and climb stairs every day forever.
I watched the Netflix documentary. I'm good.
Social support, and then this is probably going to be what's responsible for most of Canada's quality of life decline. The final one, GDP per capita.
You know what? I want to pull that up. I'm gonna explain to people what that means at the end of this episode, because
do it right now. Okay, just take a minute. Prepare yourself. I'll pull up a negative chart of Canada's GDP per capita while you pull up the definition.
Deal. Done. All right. Ready? GDP per capita. So everyone posted this for the realtors that are watching, which I think is most of you. All the realtors are posting this GDP per capita chart showing Canada that had a growth of 1.4% or something.
GDP and GDP.
Okay, so I think
GDP
most realtors,
per capita is that divided by the population.
Right. Okay, so we got GDP per capita as a way to measure how much economic activity a country produces on average for each person living there. So in simple terms, it's like dividing the total money pie a country makes in a year by the number of people who get a slice. So GDP is gross domestic product, which is the total value of everything a country produces, like cars and food and services, in 1 year. And then per capita means per person. So if a country's GDP is 100 billion and it has 10 million people, the GDP per capita is 10,000. That's the average economic output per person. So it's often used to compare how wealthy or productive countries are. A higher GDP per capita usually means people have more access to money, goods, services. It's an average. It doesn't show the wealth. It doesn't show if the wealth is spread evenly or if everyone actually gets that amount. But it's like a snapshot of the country's economic health per person.
Good way of looking at it. So let's go back to the pie. So you got a pie.
Let's go back to the pie.
Dave's hungry. Let's go back to the pie. You've got a pie. You've got 10 slices, okay?
Right.
And then you think you got 10 guests coming over, but then two of your guests bring friends, and now all of a sudden you've still got 10 slices, but you've got 12 guests, and so you got to start cutting that pie up a little bit more, and that means everybody's got to chip in a little bit. So the amount of pie per person shrinks, right? And then if the pie is next time you have a party, you're like, frick, Dave's gonna bring all of his buddies. I got to make more pie. So next time you make a bigger pie, okay? And so your pie now can accommodate 12 slices. But Dave brings freaking 5 friends next time to your party, and now all of a sudden you've got 15 people trying to eat 12 slices of pie. And so even though your pie grew, your GDP grew, the amount of pie per person decreased. And so this chart that I have up shows that they very much will call it a standard of living. The OECD is pretty kind of unanimously agreed that your GDP per capita is a good measure of standard of living. And if you look at GDP per capita in Canada versus the US, I mean, Canada has basically seen no growth of the economy on a per person basis since 2015. unfortunately, it just happens to start in 2015. That's very unfortunate for Trudeau, but he's gone now anyway, so he probably doesn't care.
What are they trying to say?
And so, whereas the U.S. is crushing it. Now, if you look at Canada compared to other countries like in the G7, which we'll do, it's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad, to tell you the truth. Right. So I put a bunch of charts out on this recently that I'll start pulling them up. But any thoughts on this while I'm doing that?
I'm still thinking about the pie and how many slices we're trying to
cut
up here for my friends. It's like how many pieces of pie do I need? No, I think look, this stuff's important for us to cover because I really feel, especially a lot of our listeners are realtors, I think for the most part, trying to help their clients either invest globally or just learn. And I think I really want to do an episode on like Fochisms versus like for all of us to understand. So this pie explanation I think is great. And I think that's what people are looking to do, looking to learn a little bit. And now you know about pies and you know about GDP per capita. Really, win-win, in my opinion.
Okay, let me pull up these because one of these charts got retweeted by JD Vance, which
no big deal.
A lot of people, this upset a lot of people, which, you know, I get it. We're talking about the political divides. It's cool. I get it. Some people like the current administration in the U.S. Some people do not, but we're not here to discuss that.
But either way, it's cool. That's what I said. Someone commented or someone messaged us privately on our Real Estate Without Borders Instagram, and they said that's not a flex. And I was like, it kind of is. You know, I said, we're not saying that we're in favor of anybody here, but it's still cool. Like a person of that stature.
Dude, it would have been cool if Kamala Harris did it, like, you know, and
easily.
And different group of people would have been mad at me. Like, you know, like it's not my fault. I didn't retweet it, honestly, but it's still cool that the vice president quote tweeted my thing. So it is what it is.
You had a few people that day do that one though. Wasn't there a couple people?
Oh yeah, the tweet's still absolutely ripping. So let's look at this tweet, okay? Because this is important. This is an important piece of the conversation that we're having.
That was the one with I just got it.
I missed the share button. There we go. So it says Canada's recent population boom has not come with productivity gains, and it shows population growth, which is just like a hockey stick graph, and then real GDP per worker has been in decline and basically flat for 2 years. And so this comes from a Financial Times article called "Unlocking Canada's Superpower Potential," and it has a lot of really good charts. But yeah, that one, let me just find it here. That one was, if I go to my quote tweets here, it was quote tweeted and retweeted by a lot of folks. There's the JD Vance one, 11K retweets on that, 3 million views. So that tweet itself has like 6 million views on it, right?
Jeez. That's good reach, right?
And it comes from, and I tagged this guy, this Tej Parikh, who is a Financial Times journalist, and this article is awesome. So we won't go too much into Canada, but this is the chart that I wanted to show you here, which is the G7. So Canada's economy has drifted behind its G7 peers, and again, this is probably why, because a lot of these guys you will see on that chart, on the original chart we're talking about, the happiness index. This is a very easy clinic for me to run on why a country's happiness might be falling as a result of that original chart that I mentioned right here, where you're showing 2023 World Happiness Report. You've got Canada in 13th place. GDP per capita is pretty good. You know, it's kind of in line. That would have contracted substantially since then because of this article that I'm showing you here. And you can see Canada's economy has drifted behind its G7 peers. It shows Japan, and like Japan is like an interesting comp, right? Because Japan's economy has been stagnant for like 10 plus years. Their stock market just hit its 1980s peak, actually, though. And then same thing, like and same thing. If you go to France, Germany, Italy, and the UK, it's comparing us to all of those. Canada's way behind when you look at GDP and PPP, which is purchasing power parity. This is the G7 excluding the US. Bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, this all obviously relates back to I can see. There we go. That makes sense. I mean, the less money you're making, the less happy you are, which makes sense. It seems simple.
especially if like you're experiencing inflation at the same time, right? Like typically, a lot of people say money doesn't buy happiness, but like it does buy food and, your vehicle and shelter and all of those things. And like, I would argue that, look, you can go to like a poor country and you'll see people who aren't unhappy and have no money, but it's a relative thing, right? If you feel worse off, like if you go to the Western world where people now 10 years ago, our generation, when I was in my 20s and maybe like I was like working a part-time job or in university or like working my first entry level job, and I could afford like a sick place, I could go out every night, like all of these things. And now 10 years later, I'm like, struggling to make ends meet. That's what kills people, right? Like that's the decline in happiness that we're talking about that happened over the last 10 years from 2015 to 2025, because that, like, the scenario I described is a realistic scenario for a lot of Canadians.
Right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely, you nailed it. Like, I mean, well, 10 years ago, I mean, the cost of living has increased, and what's the percentage of income earned percent like increase versus cost of living increase? Probably not comparable.
Yeah,
AKA,
that would be like real. So real means you're adjusting it for inflation, right? So real wage growth is like zero or like negative, to be honest. Depends on how you like perceive inflation. But yeah, most Canadians feel worse off than they were before. Pretty simple.
that was the chart that everyone was posting there, right? Real wage growth per capita versus GDP. No,
That's real. That's more its output. So it's actually real GDP per worker. So the amount of economic productivity that's coming from each worker,
from
which,
each person, like the right.
yeah, yeah.
But it showed, like, I think it was explaining like how much wealthier each individual Canadian has gotten since 2015, and it was very small.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's grown since 2018. It's fallen since 2018. That's the first thing on the chart.
On the actual world happiness chart?
Yeah. Oh no, on the world happiness chart. So they don't have the country rankings by life evaluations for 2025 yet, or 2024. Yeah, it only has the 2023 rankings. But I was just I was pulling that up in hopes of getting some context on what makes what it's composed by, right?
We should cover the rankings of we don't even know who's number one yet, man. Who's number
Yeah, we
one?
just went through it.
Did we?
I'll go back here. Yeah, we'll look at it again here. Let's go.
I think it was Finland, number one.
Finland, yeah. Which is like, again, you were saying, this surprised me because I've never seen this before, but it's like Finland's been number one for forever.
Crushing.
2021, yeah. Finland, Denmark, Iceland,
Sweden.
top three right there, and they've all been top three for the last. Then you've got Sweden. Then
Mexico's
you've got
up there, man.
the Netherlands, Costa Rica number 6, Norway number 7, Israel number 8. And Israel's come down. Everyone else has been climbing, or like Costa Rica. Look at that jump up, man. Israel,
That's crazy.
Luxembourg, Mexico. Mexico is the biggest gain. Look at this, man. Like I'm gonna redo this chart by coloring it properly, and I just can't believe, like, look at the jump up in Mexico there.
Does it say where? So it
in the
came from,
report we can find it.
Like, it wasn't
if we
even
actually
on the
pull
map.
up the report.
Okay. Let's see. It ranks by what? Cantrell ladder, donated, volunteered, helped a stranger, neighbor, stranger, and police. It's kind of shocking because I think a lot of people have this like stigma that Mexico's super unsafe. But I mean, based on this ranking system, it's not so bad. New Zealand. Who's at the very bottom?
I don't know. You have
Cyprus.
to pull up that report. That's the bottom of the top 20.
Oh, we gotta keep going. I haven't even heard of half these places.
This is why we do this, Dave, for you to learn this.
This is Lao PDR. Mozambique was on there.
That's in Africa.
Gabon. Yeah. Gabon. I don't know that one. Iran, Congo, Iraq. Wow. I can't say half of these. Interesting. I want to go with what makes them qualify. I don't think we covered that yet. Like, I know it's a long report and we can't cover all 270 pages of it, but
I found the updated report. So this is from 2020 to 2024, and it shows the gaps. So if you go to, so Canada 18th, right? So the country rankings by life evaluations.
What do the colors mean on this chart? for those
Same
watching.
as the other
For
chart.
me,
So you've
actually.
got GDP per capita. So from left to right, the blue, GDP per capita. Then
Okay.
purple, social support. Then the teal is healthy life expectancy. Pink is freedom to make life choices. The greenish yellow is generosity. Orange is perceptions of corruption. And blue is dystopia plus residual.
Where's Mexico on this one?
This
Not
is
on
the
there.
updated one. So that's, yeah, no, Mexico is right here, 10th. How's it ranking on perceptions of corruption? That's an interesting one. Wow, low. Look at that. Well, I guess that means that it's bad because small would give you a smaller bar.
Small's
So Mexico, small's bad.
Small's bad. That's okay.
But
And we know
but Mexico doesn't feel dystopian. It's probably got the biggest bar for perceptions of dystopia. You know what I mean? I think, right? That blue bar.
Dystopia means, man. Hold on.
We know what dystopia means. You defined it. It's like it's like a unimaginably bad society. 1984.
Yeah, it refers to an imagined or real society where conditions are extremely bad, often characterized by oppression, suffering, injustice, or a loss of freedom. It's the opposite of utopia. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So look at, and it's interesting because if you look at these two, like the two countries with the biggest bars for which would be the most positive ranking in that is Costa Rica, number 6 here, and Mexico, number 10. And those are the two biggest bars actually on the whole chart. So the fact that they don't feel dystopian, and so probably this is why, because if you come to the US or Canada, like I'm not one of the people who feels this way, but I can empathize with people who do feel like we're living in a dystopian society in Canada or in the US. I mean, you know, people who, I mean, look, like we you know, and same thing in Europe and stuff like that. It's like people don't want to be policed for the language that they use, or, you know, things like, you know, oppressions of speech, or even on the other side, like, you know, you're talking about like the like right to choice, you know, autonomy over one's body, you know, whether it's reproductive rights or vaccines on the other side, right? Like this is where people are starting to see that perception of dystopia creep up. And so let's look at the bar in the United States. It's I would say it's pretty average for here, where people, so they probably be average in the dystopian perspective. In Canada, about the same. So, but I'd be curious to see how those dystopian perceptions have climbed over the last little bit. Ireland is actually the smallest bar on that.
Did you see who's running for prime minister or president prime minister of Ireland, or who's made their name?
Yeah. Tell me.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor.
Eh? Do you think he'll win? I feel like everybody loves him in that country now.
I think so. I honestly, I mean, he went off the deep end there a little bit. Sorry, can you turn the light on for me? He went off the deep end. Yeah, he went off the deep end a bit there, but he's crushing it. So, I mean, we'll see. I think everyone just wants honesty, you know? Like you said, that's what kind of you've been posting about lately and everything. And I think that's what people want. They want the honesty. And they want, you know, that's what brings happiness. That and all the other things. But I mean, look.
Yeah, I guess
Conor McGregor.
I think people don't want to be gaslit by their politicians, right?
Exactly.
Like even if it's bad, they just want to be told it's bad. They don't want to be like someone to be like, oh, you know. And I think this is like one of the issues that a lot of people have with the more leftist politicians right now is that, you know, look, like we discussed this in the episode about the global pension systems, right?
Right.
I know why all of these why all of the Western countries are trying so hard to grow their populations with immigration. And that's one of the things that Conor McGregor was in the White House talking about, right? I understand why that's happening because I study this, but most people don't understand why it's happening. And it's happening because we have more old people in our countries than young people. And so our countries, the economies are imbalanced. And so there's no way that they can possibly sustain the pension obligations without having more young people, working class people in the country. So in order to do that, you have to grow the base of young people. Okay, well, there's only two ways you can do that. Your population can have more kids. Well, the Western world's basically stopped having kids. Birth rates have collapsed. So what's the other way to do it? Bring more working age people into the country from other populations in the world that have high birth rates, like India, like Africa, right? Like China.
Right.
And I get that, but I think politicians really could have benefited from just telling the population that, like, hey,
So true.
it's not our fault. Like, cause it's not their, like, I mean, even if it's like, let's use the Trudeau example, or even the example of the government in Ireland that Conor McGregor is going to be running against. It's like, hey, 30 years ago, when the government promised your parents a pension, their math was off. And we're fixing the math. Okay. Like, and blame it on the past politicians, and then say, we're fixing the math. And there's only two ways we can do that. We can either charge you a ton more money. We can do what France tried to do and was met with civil unrest, which is delay the age at which people can qualify for a pension. So we've determined that. Let's check that one off the list of bad ideas. That's not going to work. Increase your taxes, right? Or we can add more people to the population that are paying. And I would actually agree that economically and socially, that's probably the best option. Like, most people, and it's the easiest one to push in, because people, the way that the tax actually takes place is that inflates the economy. It causes inflation. So you have more people consuming, more workers, more money coming into the country. And so that creates inflation, and inflation is functionally the same as tax, right? So all of the boomers in Canada who benefited now from all of the immigrants coming to Canada, the value of their properties went up. Exactly. And so now all of a sudden they're more well off, right? Relative to the younger people, but the younger people are way less well off, which is why the happiness thing is taking place. So it's a dynamic problem, man. Yeah, I think, and this is the challenge that I think we're facing with democracy, is it's become so divided because the politicians aren't making an effort to unify the population around a clear message. They're trying to split the population into two voting blocks, where they can say, if we can agitate this group of people enough to come out and vote for us, then we'll win the election, right? And so they're each taking very clear messaging on either end. And so when you do get people who come out and tell the truth about what's happening, the truth ends up also being extreme, like pretty extreme. Like the way that, Donald Trump's messaging or Elon's messaging has been around this hasn't resonated exceptionally well with a lot of people, as an example, right? And maybe some people even say it's not true. I don't know. It's not really up to me I think the truth is pretty objective. So if there's a lie and somebody can prove it, sure. If it's true and somebody can prove it, then sure, I'll agree. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, I would have been like super happy if any Canadian politician said to me, hey, quality of life's declining. We get it. We're sorry. We're trying to grow the population so that we can sustain X thing. And eventually this will eventually population growth will slow and GDP will recover. And that's true. And it's going to start happening because Canada's population growth is slowing. But for now, it's going to suck. We got to go through like a couple years of bad, and then eventually there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, if I'm a politician, that seems like a messaging that makes sense. I don't know why they don't do this stuff. Maybe they should need to hire me as a political strategist. 100%, man. Anything else you want to add on this one before we wrap this up? Where is that? Where'd you find all that? Grok. Yeah, I just was going to pull up a visual for it from the report, but I couldn't find what you're talking about. It's awesome.